Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Scorpio and Virgo rising. As somebody with my moon in Virgo, I would like to say that I have a feel for the Virgo energy, and my sun is in the eighth house, and that's Scorpio's house, so I guess I could say the same about Scorpio. And you will notice in astrology that with personal points, uh, I'm saying points instead of planets because I'm including the rising sign, is that no matter which position they occupy, they will have a lot of similar traits. So the Sun in Scorpio and Venus in Scorpio can resemble each other, but there will be some subtle differences because of the position. And as I stated, having the Sun in, like if you have the Sun in the eighth house like I do, then you may have scorpionic traits, or with Virgo, if you have, the sun in the sixth house, that's Virgo's house. That would be like having the sun in Virgo, stuff like that. And there might be things that you do that are very reminiscent of that sign. So in this case, we're going to talk specifically about how the sun in Scorpio blends with Virgo rising, because we're talking about the elements of water and earth, which are harmonious. They form a sextile, and this is 60 degrees apart, and it's a cooperative angle. I don't just say good or bad because that's too simplistic, but it's cooperative, which means that the goals of both of these points are in alignment. They're not like, fighting one another. So, but you do have to look at degree span or the orb to see if that's officially the case. I know that the site that I use is astro.com, and they do do the work for you, so you don't have to figure it out. They have an aspects table, and I just find that to be the best because there are differing opinions on these kinds of things. So I just like to go to the aspects table to find that out. And, you can generate a free chart there too. But anyway, but even if it isn't, it really doesn't matter ultimately, because there still is going to be harmony with the elements. And these are both, earth and water are feminine signs, are feminine elements, so they're feminine signs. And this means that there is a more passive approach to life. Not saying that they're just slackers, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about to me, there can be a lot of flow. There's not that striving and pushing. Now, when we talk about striving, usually we're talking about ambition, right? So that's what the sun sign tends to represent. Now, there definitely, if Scorpio is there's no slouch to that type of person. They will tend to be ambitious, and that's because the two rulers of Scorpio are Pluto and Mars, and both of those planets are things that we would planets that we would connect with ambition. Mars is directly connected with that drive. But Pluto is all about power. And so that goes very nice and neatly with career ambitions and things like that. But the way that a Scorpio person goes about it can be quite low key. Like they're not overt necessarily. And that's the ninth dimensional chess player. And that's why Scorpio is so associated with chess. I mean, that's what I think. I don't even know if I've read that, but I know when I was a kid, I loved chess. Again, I'm a Sag, I'm not a Scorpio, but having the eighth house sun And always that thing about looking ahead, always like anticipating the opponent's moves and being 2 steps or 10 steps ahead is the appeal of chess, I think. And it's so funny because my father taught me chess, when I was really young. And I used to beat him even at a younger age because I was able to, because I feel like he had the moon in Pisces or something. And I feel like he had this like kind of innocence. He had the sun in Taurus. And he just kind of, sometimes looked on the surface of what was going on, and I was able to do the to beat him. But it was fun because he was a great, I really appreciate him teaching me chess in the first place. But that kind of thing is very important to Scorpio because Scorpio really despises weakness and in themselves and in others. Now, it's very important to look at the moon sign because that will give the person more of that compassion. And, what if the moon is in Pisces? That's not going to be the case then. That will definitely soften up the Scorpio. I've seen this firsthand. But in general, that there's a cutthroat quality of Scorpio that is actually quite infamous. And why people tend to get nervous about Scorpios is that even though they're a water sign, they just have, I'm saying they, but you have a very uncanny understanding of human nature. Because the 8th house is connected to the shadow, and I've decided that psychotherapy is shadow work, and it's really about delving into the recesses of a person's inner self and the subconscious. Okay, so a Scorpio person is able to understand that inherently, and with it being in the sun sign, see, I could say that about the moon or Mercury in Scorpio, that you would have this ability, or having Pluto in the 3rd house. That's another example of that. But the point is that with the sun, it may be something that you do for a living that you won't want to do. So whether it's I could see 2 things straight off as professions. Being a psychologist or anything in that field, a therapist, I don't know if I'd say a social worker unless it was the social worker that is working in a school, maybe, for kids, is kind of like a psychologist, I guess. And I could also see somebody who is a detective, someone who is very astute at, because, and I'm also talking about the rising sign being Virgo, because Virgo is analytical through the ruler Mercury. So that is your ruler, is Mercury. So the mind is always a part of what you're a part of. And this is the ruler of the chart. And it's also important to look at where Mercury falls in your chart for a better description of what you may be involved with. But so Virgo is about details, and this can come in handy so well with somebody who's a detective, who's in the forensics, criminal forensics, forensic science. They're gathering evidence after crimes because they can hone in on little details that other people might totally miss. And just speaking separately about Virgo rising, it's really interesting because I typically wouldn't think of somebody being in show business who has Virgo rising, because I actually think that people with Virgo rising might be quite shy. So this combination might produce somebody who is very reticent. Virgo tends to be hard on himself or herself because you are a perfectionist. And this is the rising sign affects the appearance. So this could be the person who is never satisfied with how they look. And I have a video on body dysmorphia that you might find interesting. That would also, I think you'd have to look at your Neptune situation, like if you have hard angles to Neptune, but who knows, even a conjunction to Neptune from Mercury or something like that, where you're not seeing things. If you have, there's other things. I have it all on my video about that. What was the other one? If you have, if you have your moon in Pisces, or something where you're not really, I don't know if I'd say the moon in Pisces, I don't know if that would really do it. Or your moon in Libra, where, being beautiful is an excessive concern of yours. Then Virgo rising might even be torturous, because you might feel like you might just notice your flaws that nobody else are noticing. And in and of itself, I really feel that Virgo rising is a humble type of a sign, that it is not it doesn't seek self-aggrandizement like Leo rising or something, where it wants all this attention, recognition, what have you. Virgo rising is humble. But so what I'm saying, if there was that kind of preoccupation with appearance, it isn't because of the ego. Well, it can be, but it's kind of it's like the covert narcissist who is coming from that victim mentality where they feel like they are helpless in life. The Virgo rising person in that case feels like they are under the microscope. And, maybe in the family of origin, they were mercilessly criticized for their appearance. Look at Chiron, too, if that's in the first house. So some of these things can be quite trying, because the person feels like they're not worthy, and that can lead to insecurity. And what can happen on a negative level if that transpires, is that this could be the revenge of the nerds type of scenario. I'm definitely not saying that Scorpio's a nerd, because Scorpio people are too astute to be true nerds, organic nerds. But that situation where the person maybe was bullied or otherwise criticized by somebody, and they vow to become very successful so that they will never get that disrespect again. And then they become very Machiavellian and the low vibe scorpionic self. So always being in touch with your higher, I was going to say your higher self, but I don't just mean cosmically, but just the higher version of yourself. Never allowing yourself to lower yourself by seeking revenge or anything of that sort, because you feel that you were not respected back in the day, is really a good policy, because you may become quite successful as you get older, and you don't have to go the negative route. You can just enjoy your success. So on the positive side, like I said, this can be a great combination for somebody who really notices the details in their profession, and it could really run the gamut. What I was going to say about being shy is that Paul McCartney has this combination, and no, not this combination. His sun is in Gemini, and he has Virgo rising, and he certainly is a very outgoing performer. But in Paul McCartney's case, he has the moon in Leo, so that will definitely boost the person. So look at your moon sign to see if any of this resonates. But one of the things that I think can be quite shocking to other people is how passionate, or for a water sign, usually I don't talk about passion, I talk about emotional. But because Mars is one of the rulers of Scorpio, I think of passion. But how deeply you feel things. Because on the surface, you're an earth sign, being Taurus rising. So you may give off a rather level vibe that is very down to earth and all of that. But if somebody happens to get in your web, then they will see that you are actually quite intense, and they never saw it coming. Look to the moon sign. What is that in? That will tip the scales one direction or the other. If it's in air, if it's in fire or water, the moon sign, then it will definitely tip the scales in the sign of being more emotional. But if it's in air or earth, then you might still be kind of not as likely, not as prone to that. In terms of your love life, this is definitely a combination where you might be looking for a steady relationship. Virgo being the part of you that is going out there and meeting new people, that might be difficult. You might be a confident person, because I do think Scorpio is one of the most confident signs and powerful. Maybe that's better to say than actual confidence, but powerful. But because the rising sign kind of leads the way in a sense, you might be reticent when it comes to meeting new people. So one of the ways that a Virgo rising person might find it most comfortable to mingle with other people is in doing something of a practical nature that is constructive. So for instance, volunteering, where you can meet other people that are doing the same thing. But even if you're engaging in a hobby or something, that might be a way to meet people with similar interests where you don't have to bridge that gap. You already have something to talk about. If you feel kind of shy, I always say, my gosh, as a woman, I can't imagine being a man, but nowadays I think the women are the aggressors, aren't they? At least I have certainly encountered that even with younger children, kids who are boys. I overheard them talking, and they were talking about these girls who had called them up or something, or maybe asked them out, or I don't know, something like that. And they looked like they were like 11 years old or 12 years old. It's like, oh boy, those girls are, they kind of have flipped the gender roles in a sense, and the girls are more of the aggressors. So whoever's the one who's doing it, if you have Virgo rising, you might be a little bit like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of, I'm afraid of rejection, or I'm not sure if I look good enough, if I'm acting perfectly. So social anxiety, perhaps. And actually, I do think that social anxiety is caused by over preoccupation with yourself and or with ourselves. and with this sense of inhibition. No, what's that word? Self-consciousness. And I know this from having the moon in Virgo, that awkwardness. And I still feel to this day, that I still feel socially awkward. I'm sitting here talking into my phone in my bedroom completely alone. And I'm just being, very gregarious, but I'm not like this in person. I clam up, and I have Taurus rising. So I totally get that awkward feeling if anybody has it with this combination. But it's possible with this combination that you still have a presence about you having the sun in Scorpio, that cannot be hidden under a rock, that it's still there somewhere. And it's also possible that you have learned how to navigate these situations, because I feel like when the sun and rising sign are in harmonious angle, that the person is well received by others in general, because who they really identify as and how they present themselves are in alignment. They're in harmonious aspect. So other people don't see that there's something not there. If you have a square between your sun and rising sign, people might be a lot more, I don't think this is really how this person is, They might be not trusting you even, because they sense that there's a contradiction there, that you might be hiding something. Now, Scorpio is kind of a mysterious sign, so you still may have that kind of vibe that people are like not quite sure, even when they get to know you, if they really know you. So, but the first thing they may see is that they may think that you're quite intelligent. You may wear glasses if you have Virgo rising, and you may be one of those types of people that don't want to get contact lenses. You would rather wear glasses. You'd rather be perceived that way. Also, although some of you might be critical about having glasses and get contacts or get LASIK surgery, or is it LASIX? I don't know. I feel like, if somebody underestimates your intensity, that depending if you have other planets in Scorpio, having the sun in Scorpio, you could have Venus in Scorpio and things like that, that might be like, whoa, okay, I stumbled into a spider's web here. So look to those inner planets to get more feel for how you respond in love. If you have, Venus in Sagittarius, you may be more lighthearted when it comes to those things. But who knows? And also, like I said, the moon sign will tell you that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually probably for the best. Because I think having Scorpio rising, if we flip the script and you had Scorpio rising and sun in Virgo, that would be more of a situation where the person's scorpionic traits are front and center, and a lot of people may be kind of unnerved by that. And it's funny because I always get such a strong response from people with Scorpio, and in all the different permutations of it, when I've done these readings, because it is complicated. And, there's a complex energy that the person is exuding that makes it hard in relationships. But on top of that, the person's own, maybe their past has been complicated in some way, emotionally complicated. And therefore, they give off a vibe like that is kind of, sometimes it can be off-putting to others. And that creates a vicious circle within the Scorpio, because the Scorpio person wants to love more than anything in the world, probably. but they're terrified of it because of trauma. And because they're also terrified because they know how deeply they feel things. I think that's another thing too. So the fear of being betrayed, of being abandoned, that's something that some Scorpios would never admit to because that makes them feel weak. But it's still there, So it's a very interesting dynamic that is going on with these people. So I think I've said just about everything that I need to say on this topic, and I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.